You're listening to a social justice podcast, an exploration of our world's social issues, brought to you by NES Design and Construction and hosted by Nicola Spurling on the traditional and unceded territories of the Kwikwetlem, Katzie, and Qayqayt peoples. Hello, this is the Social Justice Podcast. I'm your host, Nicola Spurling, and today I'm joined by Tidal System for a repeat appearance to talk about DID. And if you've been following this podcast for a while, you'll note that Tidal System is the first ever guest that we had on this podcast. And now 3 years later, we're going to have another conversation, get a little bit more in depth on this topic. And with that in mind, Tidal System, can you please reintroduce yourself and remind listeners of what it is that we're going to be talking about today? Obviously, I mentioned DID, and also maybe you can talk about what it was like being on the show previously.
First off, 3 years. It took us 3 years to get back to this. But
3 years.
Troy, the host of the Tidal System, from the great lands of the Qayqayt Nations up in Prince George, BC, Canada. God, because our first round was with Kelsey.
Yes.
I believe Kelsey Hardcastle, and it was a lot of fun the first time around. And I think we've been the ones that have been pestering you probably the most to do a redo out of pretty much, I think, everyone that you probably talked to, even though I haven't chatted to those people yet. But yeah, it's a little bit more focus on the DID aspect, which is dissociative identity disorder, canonically speaking. I want to personally kind of more, if possible, I mean, I don't know what your questions are like, but get back to the questions in regards to what living with it is like. A little, not focus on that, but like it is something that affects us in a daily life. And you know, as someone that just recently filled out their PWD paperwork, it's like I had to myself really reflect on it and what it was actually doing to us in our daily life and working life and romantic life. So that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do have a lot of questions for you about what it's like living with DID, and feel free to go off on tangents if I'm not asking specific questions about how did this impact your relationships, how did this impact your work, things like that. We can get into that through these questions as well. And thinking back on, it's been 3 years since you were on this podcast last. What has changed in your life in that time period since you were fairly recently diagnosed at the time too? So you're sort of sitting with this diagnosis for quite a while longer. What has changed the most for you? Maybe what is the most stable aspect of your system at the moment?
Unfortunately, everything. Honestly, nothing has stayed the same. I think the fact that we have been able to sit on the diagnosis for as long as we have been able to now, I think has provided a lot more of an aspect of really identifying the lesser known alters and some of the things, or I think the real thing that has came up is one, realizing just how bad we can be at times. And strangely enough, like I know the video of this might not be really used too much, but one of the things that like really is coming into me is the gender dysphoria. The female alters or the non-human alters, and just like their characteristics, and realizing, hey, I watched a video that was done by Dissociative, and this is only about like a year ago, and I'm sitting there, and she's like describing her life with DID, and she's chatting to someone like us right now that we knew in high school, because we knew you in high school.
Yes, we've known each other.
And one of the guys that was chatting to her was just like, you know, like you always sat in the back corner of the room, or like you always sat with yourself in a position of exit, or you know, like your back facing the doorway. And I was just kind of thinking, like, I never really liked small classrooms. I never, like, in the cafeteria, I'd sit usually by the doorway or like one of Mr. Dub's doorways, and it's like, that wasn't just me favoriting a spot. That was my mind accurately depicting an easy escape route in a troubling situation. And it was just like all these, like, Aiko really like came forward, and I was like, why are you because you're connected to it blew my mind. So like references and watching videos and connecting similar experiences between other systems and ours. I feel like I'm on a tangent. So
Well, just for clarity's sake, so you mentioned Aiko, and
yes,
Aiko is one of your alters, correct?
yes.
So how many alters do you have at this point in time? Because it does
It,
change, right?
when we met originally, it was 26. Um, then partner left us, work let us go. We've been on EI for a while, and we were improving. We actually made quite a lot of mental improvement in our system, and it went down to 16. But
Hmm.
when everything, like partner leaving us and work letting us go, roommates kicking us out, is just again more traumas, more stressors. Those integrations fell apart, or just new alters kind of came aware. So, but Aiko for us, luckily, has been around since the beginning. He was actually one of our very first.
Right. And can you tell us a little bit about Aiko and about some of the alters? You showed us what looked like a sports bra earlier. I know people who are not on cam or who aren't watching this with the camera on wouldn't have seen that, so I'm just calling that out. And you
Yeah,
talked
that's
about gender
fine.
dysphoria. So this and we've talked about this personally, but just for the sake of the audience, that would mean that you have alters of different genders, correct? And
So the basic description of dissociative identity disorder and the clinical description of what goes on is a child's brain undergoing serious and repetitive traumas and deep stress and repetitive traumatic events. The brain of the child does not have enough capacity or understanding to go through it, heal, come back together, and fuse back into one in the moment.
Mhm.
It the brain splits apart into different singular personalities depending on like however many originally split off. But the clinical definition of it is one or two personalities that are different than the original that is born to the body.
Right.
It doesn't have to be hundreds, it doesn't have to be dozens and dozens. Because when we first split, our memory serves that there was actually only three of us right
Mhm.
off the beginning. That was our child alter, who we shall not name, Aiko, then Corin.
Right.
And those were our first three. But they can be anything. They can be trees. They can be androids and little robots. They can be mythological creatures. They can be cartoon characters from a show that you used to watch way back in the day or grew up with. Called interjects, which yeah, I'll get into the interjects a little bit more a little bit later, but and they all come together between their amnesic barriers, trying their best to help the body survive, help the brain survive. And it is a survival mechanism. It is a trauma based survival mechanism.
Right. And when you say amnesic barriers, you mean like if one alter is sort of presenting to the world, the other alters aren't necessarily aware of what's happening there, and so they don't remember those experiences? Is that sort of how that works?
This is where a lot, okay, my own personal view on this. This is just my own hot take, and not everyone will agree with me. That's fine. But now I'm blanking again. Sorry. What can you can you repeat what you just said again? Sorry.
Yeah, so just trying to get a sense of those amnesic barriers and what causes them.
Oh, not all systems will have amnesic barriers with them. Now, this is again where the hot take comes because there is subcategories of dissociative identity disorder. There is a subcategory of OSDD1A and OSDD1B. OSDD systems are still somewhat cognizant and connected to each other through the amnesic barriers to where memories and flashbacks or feelings or sensations can bleed through to the other alters. more complex, deeper systems like ours, whereas where we'll be chatting and Aiko or Calder, whoever fronts, has absolutely no idea of the conversation we're having.
Mm-hmm.
And like so many times recently since I don't know if you know this yet, Nicola, but Corin's gone. Like, he's the one that did the podcast with you originally.
Right.
There's people that are coming up to us that we used to work with, and they're like, "How's it been?" And we're literally like, "And you are."
Right.
Like,
you don't remember them.
it's like we worked together for like 8 years at Walmart. I'm like, makes sense.
And is that frustrating for you that you don't have those memories?
It no. We are very fortunate in that way. Corin got us so used to kind of refreshing each other's memory or encountering situations where we'd be in front of someone we'd known for years that we just kindly tell the person, hey, like, just so you know, who you worked with is no longer here. Not to be rude or like insensitive, but I have no idea who you are.
Right.
And they're like, oh, well, like those people that he trusted back then knew what the disorder was. So there was already kind of an air about us that was like, it's okay, you might not remember this, but like we used to hang out a lot or we chatted before.
Mhm.
So, but again, every system's different. It's not going to be like that for absolutely everyone.
Right. And it seems like that happens more short term as well. Like we had a conversation earlier today about the time that the podcast was happening, and then you called me about 15 minutes later saying, "What time is the podcast happening?" Is that because there was one altar the first time and then a different altar the second time?
No, we were a little bit more sharing the brain, and just some of the barriers were kind of the music walls are not walls. They're not intense, solid objects that are movable and set in time and history. They can flex. So, like, if I'm slowly switching out with someone, I can go through an hour-long interview or like meeting at work or something like that, and it's like not maybe remember any of it or remembering parts where there's hands being raised. So again, it's fluid. The brain is amazing at just processing information like that.
Right. Well, and speaking of work, you talked earlier about getting on PWD. You mentioned how DID has affected your work. Can you talk about where you're at in your work life and how DID has impacted that?
We worked at a place, and I'm going to be safe legally and just not saying names of
Yes,
places that we
absolutely.
worked at, but it was an amazing workplace for the most part. Our bosses didn't understand it. They didn't fully know what it was, but the work setting was a place of a nature where if you have a doctor's visit, you have a therapy, blood work that needs to get done. If you were able to go for the hour or 2 hour long appointment and come back to work, they usually never mind it.
Mm,
And us, we go for an hour and a half of therapy. And after like a year of it, it's like we got so mentally strong that it was just like, okay, where are we going now? Back to work. Like, let's get
hmm
our dollar, let's get our money. But we got to a point where it got very mentally taxing for us, and a lot of stuff was hitting us all at once that we ended up on the Grippy Sock Motel. Right?
right. Yeah.
And that's where these socks are from. But Logie, our hospital's awesome. They let you keep it. So anyway, just a small little win for us. But they they requested questions that were needed to be answered for their health and safety management and their higher ups. Like I'm talking like the big head honchos. And I gave these questions to our psychiatrist. He said that he could not legally answer these questions. And I was like, okay, what hard? And he's like, I would be breaking privacy and legal and confidentiality agreements if I was answering these questions that they are asking you to answer. I'm like, okay. So he's like, I'm just not doing it. So when I brought that back to my workplace, after 4 years of working there, they were like, well, we can't let you back until these questions are answered.
And they
So
had to be answered by a psychiatrist?
I tried my therapist, I tried my family doctor, I tried a counselor that we have and a social worker, but the psychiatrist is the one that signed off on the medical forms for me to take the leave.
Oh.
So when it came down to it, they put me back to work, but they're like, we still need these answers. So you have like 5.5, 6 months to figure this out. My psychiatrist wouldn't legally break his vows of confidentiality. So the workplace is like, you are an unpredictable safety hazard and we're letting you go.
Wow.
And it's like, okay, like that's just really whack. But that we journaled enough. Our system's main communication is journaling. We would tell each other if I wasn't around in control of the body or manifesting in the body that day, like, hey, this is what happened yesterday, I'd go back through our notes. And 99% of the time, nothing really ever serious happened. We have an alter that is named Claire. She is what they call a persecutor. She is the one that will self-injure in times of serious stress or like a lot of pressure in the mind. And that's just one of the ways that she personally vents it. They are the ones that call people out. They are the ones that also protect the body when there's violence or stressful situations around. And they're also the ones that call out people that are negative Nancy's, constant negative pressure in our life, and they'll cut people out of our life that no longer serve us.
Mm-hmm.
Even she behaved well enough for work. Even when there was times of, stressful situations, she'd just tell people like respectfully, I'm going to go quiet or mute for as long as I need to vent what I'm feeling, but I'm here to get the work done. Let's get her shoot together and get it done. So in the workplace, we were rather stable. I mean, all my workplaces will agree with me, but for the most part, we actually got through a lot of our work days. We held down Walmart for almost 12 years. We held down White Spot for almost 10 years. And then we were at this workplace for just about 5 years.
Right.
And it's just like, now someone has a problem with it. It's like, now I can't wiggle out my way out of this. So I've been on EI since.
Right.
Anyway, so it can be DID. Now, this is a hot cake. Not all systems are going to agree with me. DID and multiple personality disorder can, at very unique and very special times, be a gift. It can be understanding someone that is an opposite gender. It should be like a vet tech that has DID sharing the feelings of an animal because they have an animal alter during, a procedure or traumatic event. And there are times where it can be very eye-opening. And there are times where it can be a positive thing, where you can maybe resonate with something or some people that you wouldn't normally be able to resonate with.
Right. So we've talked a little bit about what it was like from a work standpoint and the effect that it had on your work life. What effect has DID had on your personal life? You mentioned before relationships and
So we had a loving partner, and without naming any names, because honestly, as bad as the breakup was, I believe that there is a sense of understanding and movement forward for the both of us now. But we had a partner, again, pretty much since the time that we were at MS, the last job site that we were at for almost 4.5 going into our 5th year, where there was some battles. There was some misunderstandings between a few of our alters, both genders, well, technically all genders, and trying to avoid the names, but
I can cut the name out. I can cut the name out.
okay. This partner wanted a truly monogamous relationship, and for the most part, all of us were in agreement that this is the way that our relationship was going to go, that this is what it was needed from both sides. Unfortunately, and I'm going to put us out here because our system is the one that originally and ended up making all the mistakes to end this said relationship through mistakes made, as prior said. Our system has been polyamorous before. Our system has been very open because there's many of us that don't always follow the normal male and female only monogamous relationships. There's some of us that don't care what the other partner's gender is or how many there are. And it took us a really, really long time to try and mentally try to fit ourselves into a box that our system was never originally going to fit into since the beginning. And that's where we made the mistake, because a few of our non-humans and a few of our more troublemaking alters emotionally cheated, and they wanted someone for themselves. They wanted someone to express their own kind of relationship with or romantic connection with that ended up coming to light. And a couple of them were persecutors, again, more trouble making and trouble causing alters. But their decisions played a part of the whole system as a collective, and whatever mistakes they made fell on everyone because we're supposed to be all in agreement on one direction in a romantic relationship. There are many, many systems that we know that can do the poly, can do the openness, even with each other's alters, like alters within their own brain structure, having a relationship with each other, but also having an outward relationship with their actual chosen partner in the, I call it the real world, but the outside world. And that works for them. And their systems have been able to organize it enough in their own brain that they're happy, and that's what they all ended up wanting at the end of the day. Our system was never able to fully come to terms with that. And it was a lot harder than, of course, we were expecting. But right now, our romantic interest is absolutely nobody, especially over the last 6-7 months. We have come to a realization that the only love that we need right now is for me, myself, and I's. We do not have the mental and energetic capacity to romantically connect in any sort of way with anybody else right now in our life. And we have completely left the romantic dating world pretty much as a whole, because how can we fall in love with someone else when we can't even really get along with each other, and when we can't even really show positive interactions with ourselves?
Right. So it sounds like DID has had a pretty pronounced impact on your life, even, in the few years since we last talked. And I'm wondering what, from an outside perspective, you've noticed shift. Like, has awareness of DID changed in these last few years or in your lifespan? And if so,
I,
what has that looked like?
I think personally right now that there is a universal stalemate in outwardly understanding of dissociative identity disorder. And I remember us parts of the discussions that you had with Corin, because Corin did relay quite a bit of the information to me when he was still around. If this chance to have another podcast with you ever came up again, which I'm glad that it did.
Mm-hmm.
But TikTok, for example. Now, I will be the first to honestly come out here and outwardly say this. And if we need to highlight this in the job or like in job description, I've been in a job search for a while. If we need to highlight this in the podcast, I am in no way shaming or bringing negative light or any discrepancy to any of the systems on any of these social media platforms in all. This is just a personal take and an observational point from an outwardly state. When TikTok came out, a lot of systems were discovering, hey, we can make a lot of a positive impact and bring out in a lot of informational knowledge, as Corin was trying to do when you guys were actually doing the podcast originally. Is he wanted to over TikTok so people knew that there was another advocate out there.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was going through because I've actually personally deleted his TikTok. It is no longer serving us. It is no longer something that brings benefit to us. It was a time suck. It was a waste of our creative energy. And with all the drama going on in the United States, 80% of our feed anyway was the orange guy, like, and the decisions that he was making.
Right.
But there are well-educated, well informative systems. There are systems out there that show the bad, they show the good, they show their real world experiences. That one, we realized that we didn't need to continue with just the educational part, since so many newer, younger systems in the next few generations down were already starting to share their upcoming experiences in the world and as it is. So we were like, we're growing out of this. Like, I mean, there's systems on there that are older than us, and that's all well and good, but we still don't own our house. We still don't haven't really been able to move out. So like there's other things that definitely take priority before, blowing up on TikTok. But there are so many systems there now that when I go live as a 34-year-old, all the systems around my age are doing their parenting, they're growing out of it, or they've stopped doing just, informative videos on TikTok. Whereas 14 to 17-year-olds that were mainly in on my lives, and it's just like, y'all know, I know I'm 70 in the body, but I'm 34, the body's 34. It's like, you guys are less than a quarter of my age. I shouldn't really be chatting to people that are are in your age bracket about some of the things that you guys are going through. So kind of as a safety aspect to our own system, as well as they've got the reins, they've got the control now, they'll educate themselves. I should better distract myself with other things or more important things. But there's systems down there that have healed so much that they're back to basically one or two personalities, and two of them are actually my really, really good friends. They're called Converse Goddess. They're the name that I usually just call them by is Angel, but Converse Goddess is the way that probably people should call them. They're back down to one, at least for all intents and purposes that we know. And there's moments where they'll slightly become a little bit more co-con with each other, which is, again, they're still there, they're just more of a collective whole. But there's another one, she's a really, really good artist. Her name's Jano System. She's a little bit older than me, not by much, but she's 44, 46. I'm 34, but they're a published author. They've written books with their DID personalities as characters, or their authors can describe the characters to her, and it's that. So there's a little bit of the DID, but they author them it's just mixed in with each other. And they've sent me books. They've sent me beta test reads of some of their newest novels, and it's hell yeah, I'm ready to open that whenever. But they too recently came into a point where they all came back together, or there was a mass integration and fusion of a lot of their personalities. And I haven't chatted to them in a few months, unfortunately, since my life has kind of gone tumbly. But cutting this a little bit shorter is like, there's cycles. There'll be a time where there's people in my age range, in my generation, playing themselves out there on TikTok or social medias and describing what's going on. But then that information is maybe not necessarily needed. So then the next younger generation's coming in, and it's like me as being as older, like in a position of an age where I'm at, where I've noticed the cycles. I've noticed the patterns of information. There's a Canadian TikToker, Instagram, that did informative videos on Instagram, but they've stopped, and they're more comedic now. They're doing funny videos. They still do a little bit here and there where it's like they update us on surgeries or tattoos they've had, or just like stuff like that, or like they inform their community, of things that they're going through. And it's just like, again, one of those cycles. Who knows? They may fall back into the informative side. But one of the last major DID studies, or the studies back then as it was called, multiple personality disorder, was done in New York City back in, I believe, like, I don't have the book in front of me, but it was a book about studies that were done on dissociative identity disorder through the last couple centuries. And there's a girl in New York City in, I think, 1968 that was diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. And how they did her treatment, or like the final diagnosis, is they provided her with a medicine that calms the nervous system to generate switches or cause an anxiety attack, or like raise the heart rate in a giant glass box. And she had 69 doctors just sitting there for hours watching what happened to her with the medication.
Wow.
And she somehow, I don't remember the exact context of this, got out and started running down a busy New York road in, like, I believe, the downtown, having no ability to ground, having no ability to slow down her heart rate, and not being able to realize that she was not in a place of danger. That was one of the last major studies, one of the last major updates, and one of the last major info dumping that happened into MPD and DID was in London in 2011.
Right.
It is 2025.
Right. So 14 years and there hasn't been any additional studies
There
done.
has been no large-scale research products, to my knowledge, in dissociative identity disorder. These young nurses, these non-doctors that are coming into the field of mental health medicine. The last time I was on the ward, or as I like to personally call it, the grippy sock locale, I've been there twice recently. The first time was right before actually our last interview. I met 68 or 67. It was 67 student nurses in a 2-week time frame that didn't even know what DID was, and they're in their final year. They're in their final practicum. And the last time I was in the ward was honestly probably about 5-6 months ago. And I had a chance again to ask one of the fielding doctors, it's like, hey, just do you guys happen to have more student nurses around since the last time I was in here? And they're like, yeah, we have some coming in on the weekend. And I'm like, well, if possible, I'd like to just, have a chat with them. And now just to kind of see what they know. This is 2025, right? This is at the very beginning of the year. I met with 3 of them, and I had to fight for my chance to even speak to them, even get 5-10 minutes with them. It was addressed once in their entire practicum, and it was just, this is something that you might have to deal with.
Wow. So no advice on how to deal with it.
They had pretty much a clean slate. And it's just like, you are now working in a active ward every weekend with what I personally seen 3 systems already in this room.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this over and over, but the understanding that the research and the knowledge of DDID and OSDD1A needs to get explored. And when we were doing lives, when we were educating people or trying to, it wasn't just our disorder. We were bringing people in with ED, CTPSD, BPD, and allowing a community chat where we can actually share experiences with each other and actually tell people and show people that they might not be alone. I will not sit here and say that I saved absolutely anyone's life or had an intention to, but we are hoping that we made some positive impact in somebody's life. But that's where I'll leave that. And I want more questions. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like there's still not a huge amount of awareness, whether that is among the general public or even among healthcare professionals. So I'm wondering, when you realize that there isn't a lot of expertise there and you're trying to, as you said before, get rid of TikTok and heal, what are some therapeutic approaches that you found to be most helpful in that healing journey?
It sounds kind of bad when I say this, but there isn't really one definitive thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of things that came into light during our therapy sessions, and that is the therapeutic ways that people are trying to help us and systems learn is outdated practices, deep breathing. Yeah, like that's well and good, and I think everyone should honestly just inhale more oxygen. Personally, that's just where I stand on that.
Mm-hmm.
But using ice, using heat, like temperature, and I say it in a very unorthodox way, but temperature play. I know that sounds much more adultery than probably necessary, but ice for us snaps us out of a rapid switching episode,
Oh, interesting.
or using heat, even if it's for a negative means. We were switching during this burn, like we were dissociating, we were beginning to panic, our anxiety was climbing, and this, I wouldn't recommend this. I will never personally say that anyone should do this, but we were kind of in an emergency state. And I would much rather deal with a small issue than hours of sleepless nights and possibly having to visit the emergency room, causing even more hours of stress or traumatic, because we don't like the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Using ice, using a cold bath, running late at night when the fall's out, and it's like maybe go out in a t-shirt and everything just gets cold and it brings you back to reality. Also gets you to breathe. Journaling is another really big therapeutic practice for us. We'll put on music or like soothing music, and we allow ourselves to mentally open to each other. We try our best to fluctuate the gates, allow the memories to come through, allow feelings to persist.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, there's no real like advanced therapeutic techniques in the last 10 years. There's EMDR, which is eye movement rapid desensitization therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And we were actually put into that. Our counselor and our therapist were like, this is actually something that it is a 50-50% chance whether it will work or not, but we want to risk it and send you into it and see like what happens. That's when we went in 5 sessions of almost a hypnotic state from being 26 to 17 altos in only 5 sessions.
Wow.
Our journaling exploded. I think one of our sessions, there was 34 pages written. And we didn't even know it because we were so blendy with each other that we were like, oh, it's 3 a.m, time for bed. So we go to bed and wake up the next morning and be like, oh, Nelly. So we were pulled out of it because the doctor that I was working with, their higher up found out that I was a diagnosed dissociative identity disorder system. There is a 50% chance where you will fall into a chronic and negative and continuous negative spiral out of EMDR. Or you will go like we were experiencing and go through a continuous positive experience over a couple hours or maybe even a couple of days, where a lot of this that we were negatively dealing with is either slipped so far in the brain that we're never going to see it again, or allows each alter to reconcile with each other enough to a point where they can fuse again. Sorry, I know I'm a talker.
No, this is fascinating. Have you, I mean, obviously you have encountered sort of setbacks, but, and obviously you've been to the hospital, so there must have been sort of some crisis level situations that have arisen as well. How do you navigate those beyond, like, ice or heat is able to help bring you out of those? But when does it get to a point of that's not working, let's try a different tactic, or I need to go to the hospital? What does that look like for you?
Our main brain trigger for when we should visit the hospital is when there is absolutely little to no, as bad as it sounds, control. When there is absolutely no task or thing that will be able to get us to a point where we'll be like, okay, none of us want to control the body right now. Nobody wants to deal with what's going on in our life right now. And or a lot of injuries start to arise or occur, and there's a lot more self-harming going on, or negative patterns that we see that are like, okay, this is definitely not something that's healthy. And I want people to also kind of understand as well, is self-harming is not just adding red lines to the forearm, is not sleeping, is not, or being passively SH, where they don't worry about crashing their car, or don't worry about the consequences of potentially dangerous interactions. As we learned in our therapy, being a diabetic ourselves, eating a lot of sugar, knowing that it's bad for us. SH can be drinking way more caffeine than is ever necessary in the body. Let's say Diet Coke, for example, which we have done to ourselves in for a long time period. Well, we'll go through a 12 case in 3 days, or a lot of smoking, or a lot of things that aren't necessarily life-threateningly dangerous, but it is considered such in a way where you're still doing things where it's not healthy for the body. And sometimes it's even not visible to you. It's your therapist that notices, or your counselor, or your psychiatrist is being like my therapist will always ask me, how much did you exercise this week? Like, how much did you eat? How much did you drink this? And it's just like, okay, those are like normal, no signs of anything worse than what's normal.
Right. And maybe this has to do with communicating between alters with regard to this. But maybe it's a question about just general scheduling or communication, or just decision making. How do you coordinate practical everyday life things? Like, I think when we had our last episode, you were using an iPad, and one alter would write a note in the iPad, and then when it switches, when the alters switch, then you can look at that iPad and be reminded of things that are happening. Is that still your technique? Is journaling your main approach now? What are you using to communicate?
I personally do not mind showing this. I do not know if I am able to flip my camera around, but this is exactly what we were mentioning. So
for anyone who's listening, Tidal system is now trying to turn the camera around to show the journal.
yeah, so this is how I would write. This is my font. This is my spacing, my punctuation. This is how I write, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about Invamir is he has two modes. He'll write like me when he's co-con and when somebody else is watching.
Mm-hmm.
But when he is on his own, it is very 8-bit writing. It looks like a digital clock. And I know this is more for Nicola, I understand, but this is how Invamir will write on his own.
Oh, wow. And it just it looks like it starts to shift mid-sentence. So there was a switch that occurred at that moment, was there?
Right here.
Right.
And the thing about Invamir is he's an AI unit. So he'll actually answer his question by starting off with answer, would shut down. Or there is a feeling of gloom or dread, possibly misjudgment, being displayed. Also detected serious lack of emotional stability. So our therapist gets our journal, and our therapist will sit there and he'll be like, okay, and we usually write down what time it happens, what day it happens. And he's like, so this is when he came out and this is when he started writing, or you guys were kind of back and forward with each other. But there's apps now, one called Simply Plural, to where I can't show you because it's on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
But not just for DID systems. This could be used for someone with personality, bipolar disorder. This can be someone that is dissociative a lot, because disassociation is a part of our disorder as well, as per the name. It can track minutes, hours, seconds, days of when one of them is fronting, and when there's a switch on the app, I can send that to my psychiatrist. So, like, when we started escitalopram, one of our anti-anxiety meds, he's like, I want a 2-week screenshot of what the switches are doing, or how many times you guys are replacing each other in control of the body. I'm like, all right. So 2 weeks later, I sent it to him, and he's like, so escitalopram for you guys is working.
Mm.
So there is, like, in that way, like technology, Discord, there's channels for dissociative identity disorder systems. Simply Plural is another really good one. So it's really weird because our systems alone and the systems that are out there are doing more work right now in fielding apps and technology than doctors and scientists are.
That's incredible. And when it comes to roles, like, can you bring out a specific alter by starting a certain task? Like, I know some of your alters like to build, you had them on the table in front of you, these, I can't remember the name of them, but
we'll just call them little robots for now.
Little robots. So, like to build little robots. And are there other tasks that other alters like to do? And if you start on that task, you're more inclined to bring them out?
Our system being DID into its one of the fullest extents. I'm not going to say the fullest extent because no one knows if there is a full extent of it. But no, a lot of the time is how our system wakes up in the morning. It is whoever is in control. There's some days where there's 2 or 3 of us. Like, late into the night last night on our app was Luna and Ripley, who you haven't even met before. And honestly, I've only met Ripley out of the 2 of them. But like Fern, for example, like our soother alter, he's more likely to just rank or control the body when we need soothing, or when there is a time and a place where we can relax or drink a Diet Coke to relax our body, or do something for ourselves. Our trauma holder, we call him our main trauma alter, but our first child alter, He's the little robot builder. He knows all the little bits about these. He knows where they fold. He knows how to pose them. He knows everything about them from their shows, almost to an autistic level. So when we buy something like this, it's not that we are even creating the situation where he can front or he wants to front. Is we know that he doesn't like hanging around our parents. We know that he doesn't like any other people around when he is out. So we'll naturally kind of just put ourselves in the prime destination or space and time to where he can come out and enjoy something that he likes to do. And even when we do take those prime moments, that it's not 100% that he's going to show up. Some days we are like, mom and dad are on a vacation, sister's out all day working, and we're just here at home on EI, and it's like, just not feeling it today, are you? Claire, on the other hand, being a persecutor, she can sometimes overpower or put herself into a situation to handle it when we need to, but it's not that we're actively trying to force her to front in the body for that particular thing. But every system's different. There are some DID systems I know that have full amnesic episodes where they can fortunately be like, nah, we need our Claire for this, or we need our Zaku for this. But again, to each their own.
Right. And are there certain boundaries that you have to set to protect your system? And how do you hope that either through setting those boundaries or through some of the other steps that you're taking, you're going to be able to continue to heal over the years? And what does that healing look like?
We are kind of in the middle of one right now where it is with a family member of ours, not immediate family member, but a family member of ours that we know triggers us in very bad ways. That we're in a place where, let's say it's like a family dinner or a family birthday, and it's out at a location where this family member is going to be. We won't, again, put Claire in a place that she will front. But is this, if something was to happen there, we can somewhat trust at least 80% that she's going to at least become Kokon and get us out of that situation or whatever it is. But I am losing the context of the question.
You've talked about the boundary aspect or one way that you've had to set boundaries.
Yes.
And I'm wondering how either those boundaries or some of the other things that we've talked about in terms of ways that you've been coping, how you're hoping it's all going to help on that healing journey that you've talked about, and what
Okay.
you want that journey to look like.
So when it comes to this family member, I'm not trying to be repetitive, but when it comes back to her, we know what she is like. We've known this for a very long time. So we'll set not necessarily a boundary with her, but a boundary with our own feelings and a particular altar that will usually come out to handle her. So one of the times we went out to this location and we were in a gay shirt, like a pride shirt, had rainbow all over the sleeves, and we had rainbows all over here. Before we even got there, because we realized halfway there, and this is way out of the lake, so there's no just turning around, going on and getting a new shirt. This may occur where there's going to be a negative interaction over what we are currently wearing, and if there is, step back or go for a swim, go do something else on the lake until the negative tension dissipates, or we just leave and it is what it is. We have to look after ourselves first. That's, again, it is what it is. And there was a negative interaction with it, but with that boundary that we already set for ourselves, is like we had a t-shirt on underneath, and we were like, okay, like we'd rather wear this because it's middle of the summer and it's white, but clearly that's not all right with you. But we're not going to leave and sacrifice a good time out of the lake just because you have an issue with what we're wearing. So there are times where we do just a boundary more with ourselves. And it's like, we can't get angry. We can't get frustrated because this is their property. We're a guest on their their land. And it is what it is. So it's not the best way, but it is one of those boundaries that we do set, not with them, but with ourselves, where we're like, okay, this could happen. This most likely will happen, but we don't have to negatively react to this. We don't have to feed into this. We don't yeah, we made the mistake, but we acknowledge that we made a mistake wearing what we did. But with other people, like with what Corin did, it should be a time in our realm and our space and the age that we are living in where there should be modicums of respect when someone comes forward to you being like, hey, just so you know, I might forget your name in 10 minutes, or the next time that we meet, we might not have any memory of even chatting to begin with. Please don't be mad, and just be honest with them. Be transparent with them. Let them know what we are dealing with, so that if they ever came to another situation like we've been going through, especially recently, there's no bad blood. There's no ill will. It's not like we purposely tried to forget their name, where we worked, or wherever our friendship was. You gotta find the right people, and boundaries, no matter what they are, and consent when sharing information should always be in high regard. Should always just be a given, at least in our own personal take.
I think I asked you this question in our last podcast episode, and you'd answered something about I think it was a TV show or a movie that had just come out at the time. But is there a myth or a media portrayal that about DID that really bothers you, and why?
Oh, you have got me locked in, Nicola. So I'm going to start off with saying something. Modern Hollywood, modern TV shows, and major series that are out there, I think that there is a lot less like in today's day and age, I believe that there is a lot less mockery of multiple personality disorder, and there's a lot less flat out bullying of the entire mental health disorder realm of DID and OSD1A. They are getting parts of the picture. They are getting parts of the whole. And I believe while Hollywood could definitely do a lot better, and modern media realms can be a lot more educated, there's three main ones. Moon Knight being one of the big ones, especially recently. The main character, canonically, from the very beginning of his media creation, was always a DID system, or back in the day, had multiple personality disorder. But in the most recent adaptation of the live action, it's handled beautifully in one aspect of this person, the main character, I believe the main character's name is Mark, looks in the mirror and it is him, but it is a completely different tone. It is a completely different voice, and it is a completely different personality. Being like, let me save us. Like, I can get us out of this situation. Bravo to the actor. I do unfortunately forget the actor's name, but this actor was downright beautiful in his portrayal of DID. I believe that he handled it with absolute respect. And I will reference it later because it is on my tablet and I will need to look it up. But another more corny show, it is called Doom Patrol. I believe back in 2019 to 2022, I do believe, is when like the show was being either made. This character, which again, sadly cannot remember the actress's name, had 64 different personalities canonically in the show. I believe she portrayed 15, maybe 16 of them in the time that the show was on. But the one thing that they got right about our disorder is the switches, the inner world, showing the safe place of the mind where all the alters or all the personalities live. And not all the alters knew each other. Not all the alters even in her brain, could see each other. Or there was always time periods where there's an amnesic barrier, they could just hear each other. But it's corny in the way that each and every personality that she had a superpower.
Ah.
We do not have superpowers. Yes, Aiko has a 5-minute breath hold, doesn't feel underwater pressure, and can just stay submerged for what feels like ever and ever. But we're not inhuman. We can die. We can get injured. We can suffocate. We're not immortal. We don't survive impossible things. And I do believe that Corin mentioned this to you before I mentioned the other show. But we are not friends. We are not a family. We are not brothers and sisters. There's a therapy that we were offered called IIFS or IFFS, I believe it is, Internal Integrated Family Systems. From the very, very beginning, when we were offered that and we found out what it was, we immediately said no. And they were like, well, just maybe ask why. It's like, they are not my brothers. They are not my dad. They are not my sister. Like we are a bunch of grumpy non-humans, freaks of nature, and children all forced to live together. Like we're not purposely. Sorry, Aiko. Just what's this? Freaks of nature. He usually gets a little huffy at, but anyway, and there's another show. Now it is not based on DID. It is not in regards to DID. There's no real actual connection in the show between DID, mental health, and what's going on. But in this realm, in this media, this TV series, there are groups of people called clusters. They wake up one day all seemingly just connected to one another. And the way that I think that it personally, again, these are all my own personal thoughts for the podcast listeners here, but they can connect to each other through a mental link wherever they are in the world, see each other in the world right next to them. So like you and I right now, but we're not over a Zoom call. You would actually be sitting here, and anybody else that's not within the cluster wouldn't see you, or they wouldn't see me, and we would be having this conversation in our own brain and in our own time space. In a way, it's just like they can borrow each other's skills, like me using Aiko's ability to hold his breath to cancel out pain in the body, like my AI alter, or to deep store information or languages that I might not easily have access to, like being able to hold down a fluent conversation in Norwegian with barely having studied it at all, right? But so it's just people often really just, it's like you have built-in friends, or it's like you're never alone. I'm going to say this with passion and not try to be aggressive with it. People with DID are some of the most lonely people in the world. Yes, we have many, many, many alters personality and voices in our head. That just makes us feel more isolated than ever. And because not everyone's going to be able to get it. And what you really just need to tell some systems, or really just do for systems when they are deep in depression or the sadness, don't tell them that they're not alone. Just, again, trying to not sound rude, shut up and listen. Don't jump to a conclusion. Do not jump to, oh, you have DID. There's a lady that is 25 that we have been personally chatting with for a while now. We know from our own experiences she has full-blown either OSDD1A or DID. We've known for years. We've known for months and months and months. It is not on us to diagnose her. She has to figure that out all on her own. But what we have been able to do is try doing this. Try asking your therapist next time you see them to do this for you. Might not amount to absolutely anything. There might not be any benefit to any of it at all. But she is already, after 2.5 years, going through her own diagnosis practices to get an answer of what they are actually going through. And it is leading to DID.
Mhm.
It is not on us to jump to the conclusion and brainwash them into the fact that they have DID. It is on them to figure out.
Right.
And DID systems, Nicola, will never actually know. Our disorder is covert in nature. Our brain was never originally actually supposed to know that there's multiple of us. We just started looking for our own answers, right?
Yeah. And is there anything else, like we're getting close to the end of the episode, and
No.
I know we've already run a little bit on the long side, but I obviously wanted to give you a chance to talk, and I think it's a really interesting conversation. And
I feel bad because I've only answered 3 questions and I've barely let you talk.
well, okay, so I had a ton of questions, and you've actually answered almost all of them at this point, through conversations that have happened. And I'm curious to know if there's anything that we haven't talked about yet related to DID that you think is really important to bring up.
I remember you asking us, is there any rules? Is there anything that you shouldn't ask the system or say to a system?
Mm-hmm.
And I did make a TikTok about this. Can you switch for us? Or I'm tired. Can I talk to this person? Oh, never. That is like our system's number one rule is just no, we're not a circus. We are not going to, not that we even most of the time can even trigger a switch. Sorry, that's just wow, whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
one, saying that you're tired of a particular altar or that you want to talk to another is like, we're not a menu. We're
Right.
not just going to, like an iPad, just scroll through and pick out one that you want to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the mistakes that our ex made with us during the breakup is one of their final messages to us was out of all the other, like out of all the alters in your system, Troy, I'm going to miss you the most. And it's just like, wow, okay. So like, initially Claire, of course, became very active and was just like, what the fuck? What? Ah! It's just like she really only did what it sounds like only truly care for the one that was around the most.
Mm-hmm.
And the others she just kind of put up with. But we are not this person. We are not going to try and speak for them. It is just how it personally sounded to us. And when you do have a system friend that is, now this is falling back a little bit more into the pride. This is falling back into the LGBTQ kind of world just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit. But when it comes to an altar, and again, this is something that our partner at the time when we were first together did reasonably well, or we thought did reasonably well. When they are coming out to you, or they are trying to express themselves more to you, one, that is trust. As you know, Nicole, I mean, you let us walk around your apartment some nights or like to the grocery store when one of our female alters was wearing their skirt and you just didn't mind. You were like, it's just is what it is. They're doing their thing. don't automatically jump to them being experimenting with their gender. It could just be a female alter present, or it can be an alter trying to express themselves to someone that they have found trust in at particular times. And when I speak to my partner about this, is back then she was coming home from a work trip. We were cooking dinner for her. One of Zaku's favorite songs came on. So she got dressed in, her outfit, her wares. And when came through the door, she just saw the skirt, saw the shoes, saw the garment that we were wearing. She's like, "Oh, hey Zaku, what's for dinner?" And just rolled with it. Didn't need to make it awkward. Didn't need to question anything. Just, this is who is in control of the body. She let her express, and the rest of the night went off with pretty much no hitch at all. When you are understanding DID, there has to be room for flex. There has to be room for self-expression. There has to be conversations that need to happen with whoever they are trying to trust. Maybe a different alter of them is trying to trust, where there is no judgment. And there has to be that open-mindedness. But again, I don't want to take too long with that. But if you do that, you will have so many more alters fronting around you. You'll have that much more layer of trust and openness with you. So that is like a personal hot take of ours.
Right. With everything that we've talked about in mind, and recognizing that the general public doesn't seem to have a very good understanding of what DID is, what can our audience in particular do to help in terms of supporting systems, reducing stigma, creating access to resources? What are some options for our audience to help?
Podcasts like this, allowing trapped voices to be heard. There is a organization here in Prince George called the CHMA, and I am in no way negatively bashing this organization. They are actually a really, really good organization. My counselor was trying to open up conversations for us to allow us to advocate for our mental disorder that we are experiencing or suffering from in this life. And they had us lined up. There was a group of us, not citizens, but people with mental health disorders, coming together, chatting to doctors in our area, psychologists, therapists, counselors, other workers with CHMA in a giant setting, and just opening up the deeper, the darker, the more awkward conversations. To 3 days before, canceling the entire event as a whole because it would have been too negatively triggering. I understand that they did it out of safety, and they had a very positive mind state around what could be potentially triggering. But dark conversations need to occur. Advocation needs to occur. People need to really hear voices like ours to figure out and see what is really going on in our world out there. And the more chances that we have for that, I think the better off we'll all be. But that's my hot take.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation to help create that awareness. And with that, this has been a Social Justice Podcast. I'm your host, Nicola Spurling. Today, I've been joined by Tidal System for a follow-up conversation on DID. Thanks for joining.
Always will be ready, Nicola. I know I already understand that a third one might not happen, but you know what? If it does, we are ready. Let's get this bread. But until then, be well, my friend. Well, our friend. And Calder's up here too. So anyway, I want to shut up now. Thank you, everyone, to who may find this or listen to this.
You've been listening to a Social Justice Podcast, an exploration of our world's social issues, brought to you by NES Design and Construction, and hosted by Nicola Spurling on the traditional and unceded territories of the Kwikwetlem, Katzie, and Qayqayt peoples.